Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma here about Kagurabachi, chapter number 122. This chapter is titled Start. And you know what, I get where you're going with this chapter title in the whole idea of, starting on the next part of the actual Seitai War, with the whole idea of, everything is sort of now in motion. The Hiroshima talks have now wrapped up, and it was really bad for Japan. You lost a few of your strongest warriors, and Shiba isn't in any condition to fight right now. You guys lost a lot, and are also getting these massive demands handed you by the Mikaboshi and Ryu in specific. Japan isn't doing very good right now, and to start, they have to somehow figure out how they can win this battle. And part of that involves the Enchanted Blade plan that we see at the very end of this chapter. I get why this chapter is titled Start, but it still isn't going to make me sit here and think that Hokazono actually can name a chapter of manga, because I've seen how this man does it. I don't trust him naming any chapter really ever, But either way, this is a very interesting chapter of Kagurabachi, because after all of the really big stakes that we had with the whole idea of the Hiroshima talks, we now sort of step down to more of the high stakes in the realm of business meetings and diplomacy, right? No longer battles with swords, but now battles with paperwork and scheduling, right? And that is really where this chapter shines in all of these ideas of looking at all of these concepts and exploring them more fully as we move on to the actual meat and bones of the Seitai War itself. As I mentioned last time in Kagurabachi, we wrapped up the Hiroshima talks. I think I've said that now 4 times in this video so far, and I've only been recording for 2 minutes, but you know what, it's fine. Hiroshima talks, they ended. Ryu literally went through and killed everybody. We saw a few holes put into Yoshinojo, into Hiroto, and also Mashiro met his end last chapter, and only Shiba made it out alive. He did get his neck slit open, but Ryu used his Sumeka to pretty much explain hey, part of reconstructing the environment is also sort of healing people, and you need to go back to the mainland of Japan to tell everybody my demands. And that's where we ended the last chapter of Kagurabachi. And I find it very interesting, as we don't start off this chapter of Kagurabachi in that same spot, but it does seem that when we start this chapter, it is after the events of the Hiroshima talks. As we see that Kunishige is hanging out with Subaru Urita outside the Sorcery Bureau somewhere, and I really love how Kunishige doesn't look like he's changed clothes at all since he got there from his hideout pretty much in the mountains, as he's just sitting here and he's just munching on this rice ball, and he's just like, rice ball? And he's just eating all of it oh my gosh, it's so fluffy. And Urita's just I know, it's very good, isn't it? It's all about the precise amount of compression and how the rice harmonizes with the air. The rice balls I make transcend rice balls. And I really love this characterization here, because it just shows that Urita is really just a true craftsman in every sort of part of his life. As, we know he knows how to make swords, but also, whenever it comes to making rice balls, which really have no impact the way that swords do. I mean, I guess it can be argued that rice balls have a bigger impact than swords do in keeping everybody fed and hungry, but it's not really a danger that comes with eating rice balls. That's sort of what I'm trying to say here. But I just love how we see that Urita also dedicates his craft to that. It's a little bit of a fun moment. But either way, Kunishige then sort of slows down and starts to be a little bit more serious as he's eating this rice ball, and he says, "So, Subaru Urita, I read your book a long time ago." And Urita's "Oh, so I guess you're a serious student then, aren't you?" And Kunishige's "Yeah, serious student my ass. Everything you wrote was pure garbage, wasn't it?" And Urita looks back at Kunishige and just says, "I knew it. I figured guys like you would keep trying and failing until they saw through all of my lies." And Kunishige's "What do you mean, good? What is good about any of this? You just wasted my time." As Urita just says, No. It wasn't a waste. You developed a strong internal logic through the process of unearthing my lies." And Kunishige's "I still don't understand what you're talking about." And Urita sort of starts to make some hand motions, and he says, "Well, think about it this way. The lightweights that read that stuff and will give up. It's sort of incomprehensible to think that they'd become a swordsmith. That way, only the truly refined swordsmiths endure. It is a very much more peaceful world that way." And still Kunishige is like, I don't care. I want my money back. I paid a lot for that book. It was like my entire salary. I couldn't eat because of it. And Urita then just holds out a rice ball and says, here, have this. And Kunishige is like, okay, we're on now. Everything's okay. And Urita just says, like, hey, how starved even are you, kid? But either way, if you practiced out in the open, a swordsmith of your caliber would earn high accolades in no time. As just a little bit of a flashback panel whenever Urita was admiring Kunishige's blade that Mashiro used. And Kunishige is awfully silent here, as Urita just speaks up. If you have a reputation, you can charge more for your swords. There's no reason for a boy like you to starve to death. And Kunishige just thanks him for all of the rice balls and continues to be silent before saying, making a living by selling deadly weapons. It's something that I've never been comfortable with. But that's how it should be. We should continually struggle to forge blades that protect people. Being recognized by the state of living as a treasure or whatever, it feels like a blanket approval of this craft, and that just really scares me. And he just looks at him and is like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I wasn't trying to, like, talk about you, I just meant for, like, me personally. And Urita just looks and says, yeah, kid, but think about it this way. If you starve to death, you won't be grappling with anything for long. And Kunishige's like, I mean, I get that. And he's like, hey, you have a goal, don't you, boy? And Kunishige's like, yeah, I want to forge the greatest sword ever. And Urita says, what do you mean by the greatest sword ever? Kunishige just says, I'm not sure, so I just have to keep forging them. I'm prepared to make thousands. And I love this moment because it's so serious, as Urita just looks forward. So you're gonna need money then, won't you? As we then cut away from the scene between Kunishige and Urita. And I really love everything about this moment, because not only, as I mentioned earlier, we were getting more into the psyche of Urita and seeing how this character is very serious, but also knows that it doesn't matter. And I just love the moment where he just says, like, hey, but if you starve to death, you won't be grappling with any of these emotions for long. It's very resonant and poignant to this sort of the whole idea of, like, yeah, it sucks that you don't want to make swords this way, and I sort of get what you're saying, but you have to make them to survive. And whenever you survive, you can think more about all of these delicate processes to really form your perfect opinion, Kunishige. And I just really like how Urita says all of this. And also, going all the way back to chapter 1 of the manga, Kunishige telling Chihiro, whenever you sell a sword, you have to understand that this is a blade that can take somebody's life. You have to be okay with parting with a blade like that and selling it for money. We see it happened all the way back this early in the series before Kunishige was even known. Hokazono, love this moment. Please continue writing great things like this. But at this point, we then cut over to what I think is the 6th page of the chapter. And as we do, we get a panel that honestly I just don't really like. It is a full page spread or more story panel type thing of Kagurabachi, even though it's not like the regular story panels, which are just like framed with the border around them. Not a full page spread, but pretty much a full page spread, but not, you know what I'm saying? But this one has some text underneath it, and we see the panel. It is sideways with Mashiro, Shiba, Hiroto, and Yoshinojo all standing here. And on one hand, wow, this would be really cool as like a cover page or something like that, you know? But I don't know, like, I guess in the physical magazine of Shonen Jump or even in the manga volume, this is going to read pretty well, you know what I'm saying? You can literally turn the volume on its side and read it, honestly reminding me of whenever, like, manga volume extras sort of have that whole idea of, like, putting the full 2-page spread on the side or, like, a magazine cover or some just promotional art. I know the manga World Trigger does this a lot in its volume versions, and I'm sure many other manga do that in the world, but World Trigger is the one that really just comes to my mind immediately. It's really cool for something like that. I don't know, I'm just not a fan of this panel as we see it here in this chapter. And also, like, I don't get why we are seeing this now. Like, I understand we are now moving on to a little bit more of the Irishima Talks discourse. I don't know, I'm just not a fan of this panel in general. Like, I feel like Hokazono could have saved this for a color page, or even not a color page, just like an illustration cover in general, And it would have been really cool, but I just don't like it here. You know what I'm saying? I just don't like it a lot. It honestly reminds me of, I think it's Gintama Volume 53. I've got it on my shelf actually in the Japanese version. But the thing about that volume cover is it's on its sign and it shows Hijikata and Gintiki. And it's just weird to see a volume like that on its side and I just don't really love that image of it to begin with, and I don't love this image here. Either way, we've got some text here that pretty much explains. March 20th, post-Hiroshima conference, Togoshiba is returned to headquarters with the corpses of the 6 conference attendees. Oh no, this is really bad, but yeah, it is what it is. I'm not a fan of this panel. At this point, we then see that Ichiki is sitting here at the clan head meeting of the Sorcery Bureau. And it's pretty cool to see Ichiki here. He pretty much looks the same as he does 20 years later. It's honestly rather funny. But he's just sort of sitting here and he says, okay, so how is Shiba's condition? As one of the other members here at this round table starts to speak up. And I do like it how even though we don't really see many of these people, we still know a few of them. We see Kasen here. It doesn't look like he's the lead at this point in time, but it's so very obviously Kasen. We also see Izuru, as we see that he's sort of got more of this fade haircut, where it's pretty much a lot balder on the back and just a little bit of like tufts on the top. I sort of understand why he grew out of this, and in 20 years he has a different haircut, because, boy, let me tell you, the one he has in the future is much better than what he has right now. And also, one of the Kabanabi leaders who we still don't know the name of, in the giraffe Kabanabi dude. It's pretty interesting to see that he knew about all of this, or he's been around for this long in the Sorcery Bureau. That's pretty cool, right? As one of these people, presumably the leader who we don't really know, he wears some glasses and he's got like this goatee and this semi-receding hairline, just starts to explain, well, he took a lot of hits and he suffered more than 20 broken bones as well as internal injuries. And thanks to sorcery treatments, he can now respond to questions. But he's going to be out of commission for a very long while, as we just see the very gruesome scene of Shiba in a hospital on an operating table, pretty much getting some surgery done, and he is beaten, bloodied, and it just doesn't look good at all. And we then get to note that it's currently 4 p.m. at the Sorcery Bureau. As the leader just continues on, the Mikaboshi, the clan of sorcerers who once ruled Japan, they were said to have died out eons ago, and now apparently they've been lurking at the bottom of the ocean all of this time. It's just incredible. And Izuru then just looks over, and so what of their demands? And one of the other leaders says, initially they stipulated that if we surrender all of the Danseki extracted from Hiroshima Island, as well as all of the 3 prefectures of Tokyo, Chiba, and Kanagawa, but they appended those demands after the battle, and now this is their final version of all of the demands. As I really love this scene as it's being told in the moment through Aryu, who is looking down at a beaten and bloodied Chiba in the very image we saw at the end of last chapter. As Aryu just explains, now to the main topic. Long ago, our ancestors were banished by the Soga clan. When our ancestors retreated to that island, they prayed fervently for our clan to be left in peace. But to no avail. Thanks to the Soga princess's prophecies, we were falsely accused of belligerent intentions. They used the gravity of their Kurotsuchi to sink us deep into the murky depths of the ocean. And now I see the Soga are alive and well. To this day, they have a princess, don't they? As the leader just starts to describe some more. So what they said is that Shokoku's ultimate demand was the Danseki we mined on Hiroshima and Princess Soga. And one of the other leaders looks over. Of course, that means their goal is to exact revenge against the Soga then, right? The system that maintains order among the sorcerers of our nation is governed by a long history of deep-rooted traditions revolving around the Soga clan. Princess Soga represents the very heart of that system. Losing her would definitely signify the collapse of the regime, so that would make sense to be their goal. And the leader, the overall leader, just says, no. As we then get another image of Aryu's father, the supposed king of the Mikaboshi. Now looking over towards Shiba. The Soga must be destroyed, but their blood has value. The princess will bear my child. After that, we will slaughter the Soga clan. As the leader now in the moment again says, their sorcery lives in their blood, and that sorcery contains their legacy as well. Their overall goal is dominion, to wield the blood of the Soga and usurp their power. Giraffe Kabanabi then says, wait, then how could they know the inner workings of our underworld just like that? And Izuru says, they didn't even know our name for the Dotenseki. Apparently they managed to extract the general gist from some idiot on Irishima not associated with the government. As we see, this guy is the Goggle Sorcerer who you saw in chapter number 113. He is the guy who Shiba pretty much came up and said, hey, I'm stealing the piece of Dotenseki that you got, and then ruined pretty much everybody else around him, right? It does make sense being that that guy is very loose-lipped, obviously, and we know that he didn't serve a very good fate, and it's pretty fun now to get the context of this guy who we got set up much earlier is the reason all of this is explained. Hokazono really enjoyed this reveal here. Hey guys, this is post-production Glowplasma here, and while editing, I put a few things together in my head, and this really makes sense why Shiba and Mashiro were sent by Hasumi and the rest of the Sorcery Borough to go and find Goggle Sorcerer wherever he was in the moment. It makes a lot of sense to why they would show up there and why they got the Dotenseki off him, and then of course Shiba rebelled and said, I'm gonna go show this to my buddy Kunishige so he can figure out how to stop this upcoming war, pretty much. But this also just makes a little bit more sense in context why Izuru would know all of this, because duh, he's part of the Sorcery Bro higher up, so of course he would be able to tell Hasumi, hey, go do this, send Shiba and this other guy to go take care of that and call it a day. Just a little bit of an observation, and that's it. Back to the video. Enichiki then says, and what of the princess? We then see that the female attendant in the room starts to reply to this. She isn't sitting at any of the chairs around this table, so it doesn't seem like she is a leader, but more just like a secretary or attendant for the rest of the Kabanabi. But she pretty much explains here in the moment. She felt unconscious the moment the conference ended, and she's awake now. But after they delivered their final demands, a flood of new visions ended up coming to her, and that's probably why she lost consciousness to begin with. And Ichiki's like, and what is all that supposed to mean? As we see Chiaki in her bed, and she is just sitting here, sweat running down her face, tears running down her face as well, and her mother and a few of the other Soga clan attendants are all there around her, as she just in her mind sees this vision of Aryu wielding the Sumeka, all of this black ichor of the Dotenseki and just insects around him, and she's just like, there will be hell on Earth. As we then cut back to the general meeting in the Sorcery Borough, and one of the people in here, I really don't know who it is. We know it's not the leader guy, or who I presume to be leader with the glasses and the goatee. I guess this is possibly Ichiki, being that we don't actually see him talking at all, but we literally do not know anything about who is saying this. But whoever's saying this just says, well, here's the thing. The government unequivocally rejects all of their demands. The view is that we cannot accept such a violent and incomprehensible behavior. Moreover, the government intends to expand the anti-sorcery strategic force established over the past 2 years. And the panel where we sort of get the whole idea of this anti-sorcery strategic force, we see a lot of very interesting characters in this image. We see it is split into 4 different sections. The top section, we obviously see Izami here. He's wearing a white t-shirt, he's got his pierced ears. It is so clearly Izami. If you mistake this for anybody else, I don't know if you're considered a Kagurabachi fan. Another one of the images we see here involves 2 people who I believe to be Kabanabi leaders in the future. One of them is very obviously Kudo. It's the same hairstyle, it's that same sort of breather mask over his mouth. And also we see another guy here with white hair, or with more blonde, or in the manga it looks like white hair on the top of his head but more black hair around the back of his neck and around his ears. And it looks like this guy also has 2 piercings and is also built like a truck, a big guy, right? This is one of the leaders of the Kabanabi who also seem to know Kunishige's location going forward. And I believe this is probably Mashiro's older brother. At least that is what I'm guessing now. And we know that Kudo and this Kabanabi leader both knew Kunishige's location, so I expect that we're actually going to be getting a whole lot of the two of them, sort of like meeting up with Kunishige and actually helping with the Enchanted Blade plan that we learned more about at the end of this chapter. Really cool to see these two characters. And being that I'm a big Kudo guy, I really love Kudo, and I believe that he was one of the Kabanabi traitors still to this day, and he is not dead. We saw him die. Kudo is coming back, absolutely. We're going to be learning why he will be coming back in this flashback. Trust me there. I just love to see it, right? We also see the Kabanabi bidding guy who bid for the Shinuchi all of that time ago in Kagurabachi. It's very obviously him. He's wearing like that same suit here in the moment. We also see that he's got like that toothpick or whatever he chews on in his mouth still there. It's the same guy. And we also see a lot of people with swords on their back in suits. Very obviously the Masumi, right? Really cool to see all of these characters who, even though we don't know all of these Masumi characters in specific, like we can point to one of these and be like, hey, that may be Moku. Wow, that may be Sumi. We don't really know for any sort of fact, but it's still really cool to see Izami, Kudo, who I believe to be Mashiro's brother, Kabanabi bidding guy, and the Masumi all here in the moment. But that voice just continues to speak on. They're leaving the specifics to us. As the leader just says, no, it's not enough. Hiroto Soga was our strongest warrior, a true singularity. Alone he could dismantle a powerful dynasty, and we sent 3 other fighters no less than capable than him. They were the strongest unit we've ever assembled. And this enemy prince, or whatever he is, massacred them single-handedly. At the end of the long fight, he was lounging on his sofa completely unscathed and sent back a sole survivor. Plus, they had 5 or more warriors of the same exact caliber. This isn't something we can just throw more soldiers at. We have a stockpile of kaichi, maybe that. As another person just cuts him off, it's finite. The enemy has the exceptional ability to regenerate, and if we don't use it at the right moment, it could come all to nothing. Perhaps our only hope is Flame Bone of the Starving. And Ichiki speaks up, no, we've already reached out to the Kagari clan, but it's not that simple. They also haven't had an appropriate master in ages. If it got out of hand, it could relegate the entire continent a scorched wasteland. You know that. But it'd have to be something that phenomenal. Otherwise, a battle will produce nothing more but casualties. We know, but... As everybody is just getting more and more upset with everybody screaming here in the moment, getting into all of these arguments, we get this whole idea brought up about this stockpile of kaichi, whatever this is. Whenever I sort of hear that, I sort of think is it maybe like a similar type of Dattenseki type material, or maybe it's like a drug. Maybe there's like drugging all of the sorcery bro guys that just come around and be like, hey, we'll use kaichi. It makes them everybody very, very strong in the moment, right? It like hypes up all of their senses and just makes them very good. It makes them heal, regenerate. Like, who really knows, right? Kaichi, pretty cool. We haven't heard of that this far. Maybe we'll get more of it in the future. And also Flamebone of the Starving. But as all of these people are arguing, we see somebody sitting in the back of the room start to raise their hand. We then cut over to Kunishige, who is standing in a hallway of the Sorcery Bureau, knocks on a door and walks in, and we see that it's Shiba's hospital room. As Kunishige walks in, he's like, Shiba, should you really be up? That Hasumi guy told me... And Shiba says, I have to get up. As right in front of him on the windowsill, we see is Mashiro's blade. And Shiba focuses on it, and so does Kunishige. As Kunishige remembers whenever Shiba came over one day saying like, hey, my Kohai Stern 18, would you forge him a good blade or what, right? And Kunishige remembers all of this as he just looks at Shiba in the moment. We cut back over to the Sorcery Bureau meeting, where Hasumi just raised his hand, and the Giraffe Kabanabi says, oh, Hasumi, what do you got to say? As Hasumi just says, the force that annihilated Japan's strongest unit in history was the power of the Dattenseki. The enemy harnessed the astronomical energy of the Dattenseki within their sorcery, And one of the leaders is just so pissed off. He's like, we know that! Like, stop talking about all of this. And Hasumi's like, but that's all it is. It seems like an insurmountable chasm, but the power of the Donseki is the enemy's only advantage. And Ichiki speaks up, what are you trying to say, that our only winning strategy is to utilize the Donseki? And another leader just says, well, in that case, we've already got our answer. We've been working on it for 2 years and we still haven't cracked the code. Hasumi is just like, the enemy doesn't seem concerned either. It may not be physically possible for us to wield that ore like they do. As we then cut back over to Kunishige and Shiba, and Shiba just says, Rokuhira, how much did Hasumi tell you? And Kunishige just looks here awfully stoic. And just in his mind, we see a few flashes of images. The dead bodies of Hiroto and Yoshinojo, Mashiro's dying face, the Mikaboshi King and Aryu, and also Chiaki crying. As Kunishige just says, everything. As the leader then looks over and says, so Hasumi, you think there's a way? And Hasumi stands here silently, as we then cut to a notebook, sitting in a windowsill, the morning light rays reflecting on it. And written on the cover of this notebook is some text that reads, The Enchanted Blade Plan. And that's where we end this chapter of Kagurabachi, with Kunishige looking towards Shiba, as we get the note that it's currently March 21st, the start of midnight. And that's where we end this chapter of Kagurabachi, chapter number 122. Now, as much as I have complained about this chapter in this video, I really think this is a really good one besides what page 6 showed us in that stupid-ass looking panel, right? But I really love this chapter of Kagurabachi, and I know I say that constantly, but there's so much build up in the way that everything is sort of going through and described. I really love the show don't tell moment of whenever we first see the meeting and they're talking about all of the demands, and we get the demands explained through Aryu as he is telling Shiba. Like, it's very well done and more explaining of like, well, here's happening with Chiaki, and then we see what's also happening with Chiaki. And it's like, hey, what's happening with the king? Oh, well, he wants to do some things with Chiaki, like bear his child, and that's a little bit of a weird one right there. I'll get to what I think about all of that in a second, but I really love the build-up to showing in this chapter, and for me personally, as somebody who reviews manga in this way, or not even really reviews, but just talks about them in the moment, the events that lead through and how they relate to older events that we've known so far in a series, trying to break it down in more of a way that an audience like you who is watching this can more easily understand everything that happened in this chapter without leaving anything really out and sort of saying, here's what we know, here's what we now know in this chapter, and putting these things together, what can we think about the future of Kagurabachi? That is sort of what my job is here to do, right? And the way this is all done, the heavy cutting around in this chapter, it works really well in a manga format, but as me sort of trying to describe this to all of you, I often don't do the perfect job, and I know that it's one of my skills as a reviewer I'm constantly trying to get better at, is how to better describe all of these manga chapters in the moment. And as much as I don't know how all of this came across on video, this is still a very excellent chapter in that idea of show don't tell, emotional resonance, seeing the blade, Kunishige remembering like, hey, I built this for Shiba, who is giving it to Mashiro, and I didn't really know Mashiro for long, but it's still somebody who's dead, and this sword is now just a remnant of the past, sort of, right? It's a very heavy thing. Then eventually all of these Kabanabi leaders, or Sorcery Bro leaders, getting angry at each other, yelling, and Hasumi just speaks up like, hey, we have an idea, and it may be the only thing that is going to work. And honestly, it seems like Hasumi may just be the MVP of the Seitai War, because, like, without Hasumi trusting in Urita and Kunishige, like, would anybody have ever been like, yeah, let these guys make blades out of the Donseki? You know what I'm saying? It's honestly very interesting how much Hasumi has to do, and it makes me wonder, where is Hasumi in the current timeline? Did he die in the war? Or is Hasumi still out there somewhere? I mean, hell, I'm trying to think of like all the other Kabanabi leaders. Hasumi isn't like Earlobe's guy, is he? I mean, I know, like I just don't think that facial structure sort of works out. But like, cause Hasumi sort of got like this larger nose, it seems. I don't know. I don't think he's that guy, but we never know. Hasumi has done a lot in this battle thus far, you know. Really, the other big moment that I mentioned earlier a few minutes ago is this whole idea of what the Mikaboshi are wanting to do with the Soga clan and with Chiaki in general. Because, yeah, it's a very disgusting type thing for the king to be like, hey, the princess will bear my child. A lot of disgusting connotations that sort of come up in there. And as far as this goes, this just shows me more about how sort of evil and how much more we're supposed to hate all of these Mikaboshi, because to be fair, right now we've only seen them kill a few people, and to be fair, as much as like Hiroto is cool, being that he's dead and we've only known him for like 5 chapters, it doesn't really resonate with me. But having this moment of showing why I should hate this guy in relation to Chiaki, this character who we honestly don't know much about either, but who we know has a greater purpose going on in Chihiro's mother, it's very intriguing, the whole idea of this, and also knowing about the island of Shokoku where Yura fits into all of this, and the prophecies that he's gotten. Is it actually Chiaki who's giving him these prophecies? All of that to say, I now hate this guy more and will be more happy whenever this king gets his shit pushed in by our main cast, pretty much, by the good guys. As far as the rest of this goes, we get a little mention of Flamebone of the Starving here in this chapter. Remember, with 2 exclamation marks, it's very important we remember Flamebone of the Starving existing. And we'll learn more about that in the next chapter of Kagurabachi, as 123 has already come out at the recording of this video. I'm behind, we're catching up, that's all I'm saying. And also the whole idea of whatever this Kaichi material is, as far as I'm aware, we have not heard about this thus far, but I would think if it was a material that somebody could make a sword out of, they would have already done that in the world of Kagurabachi. So, what is Kaichi? I think it's potentially a drug or something like that, being the whole idea of we have a finite supply of it, but you know what? Let me know what you guys think Kaichi is in the comments of this video down below. I'd be pretty interested to hear it. And if all of that being said, I really think I've exhausted all of my thoughts on this chapter of Kagurabachi. It was a really, really good one, with a really stupid looking panel on page number 6. I can't get over how stupid this panel is. I think it's, I don't know, maybe in a digital reading environment, because I read most manga chapters on my computer unless I'm like binging a manga and I will read them on my phone. But like, even so, like, you turn your phone on its side and at least you have like the lock on, it's going to turn on its side, do all of that. This is a stupid looking panel. It should have been saved for like a cover page and not just in the middle of the chat. I don't know, this is stupid. If you enjoyed this video, I've talked about Kagurabachi a lot on this YouTube channel. Go check out the playlist in the description box of this video along with the end card of this video as well. If you liked my discussion of this chapter, I don't know, maybe considering subscribing to the channel. It's something that does a whole lot for me in general and lets me know that you guys enjoy these videos. And if you guys are enjoying them, then I'm going to continue to make them. That's sort of how all of these things work here. And yeah, if you did enjoy this video or think that this panel is very stupid, give this video a like, and you know what, dislike it too. It gets it in the algorithm more, you know, better than 0, 0, 0 all around on all the fronts. But that being said, I will catch you guys next time for Kagurabachi chapter number 123. Again, this was chapter number 122 titled Start, and if all of that being said, I'll catch you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma signing